Thank you for your patience and welcome to our Universal Consumer Information Tool Training, our fourth session, and of course in person. And we welcome you here to Santa Fe, here to the State Personnel Office. A nice auditorium to have this kind of training. When you signed in, it was based off of your registration for this training, either morning or afternoon, so your name should have been there. If you weren't on the list, we will correct that at the end and see that everyone got credit for taking either the morning or afternoon. We'll cross-reference it to the registration. We also will be sending out the actual PowerPoint that has some links embedded in the actual PowerPoint. We will be sending that out too. You should have received, when you signed in, your printed PowerPoint for today's training. You should have also received a reference guide on the tool. So if you don't have that, if you could please raise your hand. And I think we need several copies of the PowerPoint and reference guide, which we are working on. So we will loop back in a few minutes to see that you guys get those. My name is Denise King. For those that don't know me, I'm with the Aging and Long-Term Services Department, and I'm the Aging Network Operations Director, overseeing the Senior Services Bureau, which is the bureau that oversees the federal funds and state general funds 3 times over for the Older Americans Act services. Also, Senior Services oversees the volunteer programs, which is the AmeriCorps Senior Corps programs, Foster Grandparent, Senior Companion, and RSVP. In the division I oversee, we also have the Senior Employment Program in our Albuquerque office for both the federal program and the state program for senior participants, senior employees, enrollees going back into the workforce. I also oversee the Capital Outlay Bureau. And so Tasha Martinez is new to our department, and I'm very pleased to see that we're vastly really standing up a new process to capital outlay, and providers that are joining today are going to be getting a login to a new system. We're going to go for a online application, streamlined process, and that training will start now in October. And thanks to the non-metro AAA staff for helping us with this year's submission for capital requests, which we have our hearing in front of LFC coming up soon in October. I also oversee the operations for Office of Indian Elder Affairs and really providing support and guidance to our tribes, pueblos, and nations and our internal staff. So that's enough about me. We're here today to talk about the Universal Consumer Information Tool. And I hope that all of you were able to join the first 3 sessions where we went through the tool. I know last week, there was lots of questions, and we are developing an FAQ that will be sent out shortly this next week to provide you, the providers and staff, some information. I know that there's been lots of questions about this tool. And the reason for this tool is that as a state unit on aging, receiving the federal funds for Older Americans Act services, we have to comply. The AAAs have to comply, and providers that are contracted to provide the direct service have to comply with the rule changes. And many of the rule changes is why we modified the tool. The tool hasn't changed a whole lot, although you will see changes, and it is in the sandbox, and we're still closely working with WellSky to push it to production October 1st. You will have the option to use the paper form. I know that's been a question, but eventually as providers, with the technology available to you and with the guidance by the AAAs, you will be able to do an online assessment submittal of your consumers being assessed. It's clear that our consumers, which we have to keep them first and foremost through this process, that it is a assessment identifying the needs of each consumer, which is very different. The intent is to provide the service and offer the service that you provide directly, but it's also to assist them with getting connected to a service provider that they might need of a service that you don't provide. So, and that means through that referral process. So there are things that we talked about during the first two sessions about the information tool of the consumer demographic page of those changes of the assessment. And then last session, it was more about the clinical aspect to of the ADLs, IADLs, and nutrition. Now, we know there are going to be questions, and you are the experts, your staff are the experts. And these trainings are really train the trainer. We are training you, who are going to be the trainers to many of your staff that weren't able to take part in the 4 sessions. So using that model, you're going to be able to take the material that we provided you to be able to train your staff to be able to do this assessment in person with each consumer. And the reason I say in person is that I continuously get constituent complaints to the governor's office and to our office about consumers being sent a form with a driver that they're having to complete. That's not the process. It is not best practice. It is not the high quality of service that is needed, that we intend, that we contract for. So with that being said, I want to welcome with me today Courtney Hoskins, who is our contractor, who was previously with ACL for 27 years and had the experience through this in working with many states and at the federal level on consumer assessments specifically and compliance. So thank you, Courtney, for joining us, coming from out of state to really be here in person to assist. So thank you. Thank you. And then also with me today is Marian Morehouse. She's one of our internal gurus of the department, overseeing, she's our program and fiscal data manager and really special projects, because this is kind of what has fallen in her lap. In addition to, the two of them have paired up to really focus their time and attention now on our state plan. As you heard me say, as the state unit on aging, it is our responsibility to complete that 4-year plan. And we're right at the point of collecting not only the data and working with UNM and getting the state assessment completed and getting that information for our state plan, which will be submitted to the feds in May of 25. So with that, I'm going to go over a few things. Housekeeping items. This meeting, as you see, we have interpreters here. We also are recording this because we have a couple of providers that needed the interpretation. And so we're making that available to the best that we can today. The meeting will be posted on our website, so bear with us. We need to convert that to a YouTube video and then get that uploaded with our with the assistance from our IT staff. We also, of course, I've said PowerPoints. Again, Natasha, can you let Amy and Andrea know we have several in the audience that still need PowerPoints and reference guides. So if you can still raise your hand if you're needing those. Okay, we're needing PowerPoints. Okay. Also, we will be taking a break halfway through the presentation, so that way we can take a few minutes to stretch. I understand here at the SO office that there's the bathrooms only have one stall, so please be patient. And let's just go over the agenda briefly. We have the 2 sessions today. Again, this is Train the Trainer. We're going to go over a summary of the actual tool and the training that we've done previously, the last 3 sessions. Then we're going to do a deep dive into the tool. As I said earlier, you have the ability to be able to log on to your, using your well-site user ID and password to log on to see the tool in the sandbox. If you don't want to do that today and you want to rely just on the PowerPoint, please do. But you have a Wi-Fi connection here at SPO, and we made that available. And if you need that, just raise your hand again and we can try to get you connected if you're going to do that by laptop or notebook or iPad. And then after we do that deep dive into the tool, we're going to take that break. We're going to come back and talk about the tool information in the printable format. And then we're going to end with open office hours for our next session, which will be virtual. And we will be logging on to answer questions and to be available to you during those open office hours. And we're going to end our morning session with the last hour wanting to hear from you as providers, not about the school, but about the services, about the Older Americans Act services. As I said, with us preparing for the state plan submission, we want to hear from you. We want to hear about the services. You've heard us for the last 5 years talk about expansion. You guys have felt that doing direct service and knowing that there are consumers in your community that accessed the services during COVID, that access those services of grab and go, that are also in need of some of the homebound services like caregiver respite, homemaker, and tour services. You may be a provider that provides nutritional services, congregate meals, home delivered meals, and grab and go to an extent, and transportation, but you might be a provider that has the capacity to plan for the next 4 years of providing an additional service. And it could be a modified, it could be a staggered. So we really want to hear from you. We will be having a listening session for our consumers during the conference on aging. So I want you as providers to know we're going to be urging that consumers give us their feedback about services. I know the North Central Economic Development District, the non-metro AAA, has done an outstanding job of filling the gap of some of those services in areas across the state to really address case management specifically. But we know that there are those other services like caregiver respite, homemaker, and tour that many of our consumers are in need of. So with that, that's the agenda, and we'll be getting to that last hour of that provider input session. At this point, I think I'm handing it off to Courtney, or am I doing this next? Absolutely.
I'm so glad to see you all in person. I've seen tiny little faces. It's beautiful to see you all. I'm so blessed to be able to be here, to be a part of the ALTSD family, but the New Mexico Aging Network family as a whole. Like Denise said, I worked for the Administration for Community Living Administration on Aging for 27 years. And aging is really my passion, and I'm doing it pretty well too. So I have fully embraced my gray hair and being well over the age of 50. So thank you so much for having me. We are on an epic journey here with having a standardized universal information tool. So I'm sure that some of you have joined us for our previous 3 trainings. So I just wanted to do a quick highlight. Denise kind of did that a few minutes ago. We, the virtual training that we had on August 7th, we went through all of the whys. Can someone tell me one of the reasons why we're changing to a standardized universal consumer information assessment tool? Oh, yeah, we have microphones. I'm going to put our friends to work. So what was one of the reasons? Great, to collect consistent data across all providers. Anyone else? Okay, I'll tell you a few. So the Fed said so. And I have to say, not being a Fed anymore, I've stepped onto the good side, okay? But we still have to follow what the Feds say. Like recently there was a rule change. So I won't bore you again with all the rule change, but it indicated that the state has to collect the information that ACL says. And it also gives the state the authority to have the area agencies on aging and the providers do the same. So that's one of the other reasons we're here. The Fed said so. It's really the best thing to do for data. And it's the right thing to do too, because we want to make sure that the information that we're collecting in let's see, I'm trying to place a few places. So Clayton is the same in Las Cruces, and Albuquerque is the same in Santa Fe. So it shouldn't make a difference what zip code someone lives in. They should have the same information being collected. Okay, that's enough of training number. You're probably great. Okay, number 2, we did a deep dive into the services, all of the service definitions, all of the demographic information, the consumer data, the nutrition health assessment. Maybe we didn't do that one on there. I made a mistake. But we did a really deep dive into which part is what definition is associated with what, really the reason why we're not the bigger picture of why we're doing this. So the reason we wanted to be able to provide those definitions to you really fits into our later conversation at 11. I know that some of you all just provide nutrition and transportation services. Well, are those people that you serve, do they need more than that? Maybe. So you have a resource within that PowerPoint, which I know is posted. I hope, yes, it's posted. You have a resource that has every definition in there about what the services are. So you can use that as a resource tool when you're thinking about your areas and the people that you're communicating with. If they're like, well, maybe, someone is, I don't know. Let me slow down. I get excited. I recently fell off a ladder and I broke 5 ribs and I had surgery and it was a disaster. Okay. It's in the hospital. The hospital had to assess me to make sure that I didn't need supports at home. And I was grateful I would have if my husband wouldn't have been there. And so there's stuff to people and they need those supports at home if it's for a limited amount of time or an extended amount of time. I could have used chore services. I think my house still isn't as clean as it should be, but that's neither here nor there. So all of this has built up to the point of this afternoon, well, the last part of our training being really think about what you folks need because you have relationships with them, don't you? Yeah. Okay. Virtual training number 3. So just last week or the week before, whenever September 10th was, Denise mentioned that it was really that clinical side, and we have changed from the questions you asked for ADLs and IADLs to be these really standardized evidence-based questions. And it's important for that because they've been used over and over and over again. It's a good way to be able to assess. But the one thing I want to remind you all is that you're the ones with the relationship with your consumers, with your people, with your friends within your community. You're the one sitting there taking the notes. You have the responsibility of, that conversation, that really rich conversation with these folks who have that higher level of need when you're assessing for ADLs and IDLs. And you have the responsibility of being able to sit down and really think about what services would best meet their needs. Okay. So I know we only have a very short period of time before October 1st when this goes live. I really would like for you to really dive into it and maybe practice, maybe make a couple copies of the paper form and practice with what you know about certain consumers and think about, would they benefit from chore services? Would they benefit from any of those other services? And then take that information and talk to your team about it and have your team get a hold of Denise. Her number's there. Let them know that, hey, we really need this. Talk to your AAA. Like, hey, we don't want to just provide transportation service anymore. We see a need. We know a need because we've really dove into our clients during this time. Okay, that was it. Miriam, do you want to do this one?
Oh, it's one slide. It's just gonna stand and say it.
It's one slide, so.
Believe it or not. It's now on well. Right. The stand. And you can go in and you can tap the tool out of the back. Now, if you don't want to start a new assessment, you can also go in there and type in test TEST and then look for the test. It says Jeff DEFF and he will plug up with you practice.
Yep.
So you have two options and you don't have to sign it today while you're here. You can use the paper form, but when you go back and like it's 12 times, please practice. Now, some of you don't have to put the data in about time. So you only use the paper form. So whatever you working with a large group of people, all who have different skills and use these tools differently. So if you don't use paper forms, you may not want to look at above time. But if you use well time, definitely go in the sandbox. We still have an opportunity to change anything you might find. So your content to make sure that everything's accurate in there. Please take it to do that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll.
Yes,
Okay.
you can see on the side, but on the side over here, it shows you the different sections you'll be designated. And then over here, up at the top, you see note. The last item, and you can open up the note file and put any notes, any additional notes that you have in that note. So if you did bring the ADL or the IADL, even something that specific about that, and you want to put it in, that's where it goes.
We're used to having that consumer note page or section. You're still gonna be able to do that. You know the consumer, if they're storing in such a way that you know they're in need of meals, yet the nutrition score isn't showing that. You can put in there the justification for why you were justifying value. And so it's important that you know that. You're the one that has this consumer registered in your program. That you're need to then justify working with the AAA why this consumer isn't getting that service. It may be a physical maybe homemaker, but you have that ability to go into the notes section, we assessment doesn't have line up service. So you're still gonna have that. Now, the actual questions have changed a bit. It is streamlined. I want you to know that. I know that there's a lot of nervousness around the new tool. It's the same tool, but we've modified the questions to be streamlined. There's only 5 ADL questions. 5 IDL questions.
8, but there's only one choice.
Right, yeah, so it's streamlined. The scoring is different because it's scoring in a different way. I've only seen before. Because of in coordinating around it's got a little bit deeper in the next few minutes.
Well, and actually, the reason the ADLs and the IDL, IDL are used is because they're research based. We study their ACL compliant and their research.
The evidence base for the.
Okay, all right. So the next slide, this is just an overview of what this next chunk of, couple questions. On the previous slide.
If you search for test,
If you in the top test, and then it should bring up maybe 12 boxes. And then if you see Jeff ESQ or something, go ahead. Test consumer, comma, Jeff. Okay.
it doesn't say I doesn't have a note. So you're gonna have to know and a note comma. Right?
Yep.
Well, I don't see that. But it's right there.
So the majority of our providers, once they are doing assessment, they don't have that.
Oh, okay.
So the AAA can have to work with you, just give you that access. If you don't already have it.
So the majority don't.
The AAA, again, will be working with you guys and setting out their own guidance and giving you that access.
Okay.
Things that we have. You guys don't, because we enter your assessments. And I just asked kind of a question for you right now, that you guys mentioned, the notes, and it sounds like you're speaking directly to the providers. So will they be the ones entering the notes in, or the justification?
When they do their something the paper, form, where they, I remember, on a paper form. Sounds like it's plays are probably say that access. Sounds like, I'm not sure if we have already been access, it's probably gonna be phased. Now, the tool will be used as of October 1st. It'll probably be format for many of you, unless they give you that access. Now, there is a patient page, not notes, but just a patient page for the service that you already do on the paper format. Makes sense, yeah, I see it,
So, sorry, I wanna, so I know how we need to set our process on our end also. That justification page too, if we use the consumer notification, we attach it to consumer records. If they're using paper, then we would just attach that there, I'm guessing that's what you guys want. And if they're doing electronic, then they. Correct. So we'll be looking into different areas depending on, for those notes, again, it's not consistent.
It should be consistent.
But that's the hard part, you're gonna have some doing the assessment, some of
Right.
them.
People that are phasing with it.
Anything else? And please just jump in with your hands or something, because I just get on a roll. So.
And if they're the the screen of Asia.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Well, there, I know that you were saying that providers are not to be able to practice for the test consumer. But will we also be able to practice Adam?
I don't know the answer about adding a new consumer.
I don't think it's the same. They won't be able to, yeah,
They can practice, but the process is gonna be different. It's just an assessment. So the hard part is to use the form. I guess for a new consumer, we can print blank form, we have that ability, right? But for a reassessment, they're gonna have to go in, if they're using paper form, they're gonna have to add the assessment and then print it as a reassessment in order to get it to print rights. There's gonna be extra steps on them for them now they to go into the record and print the details page. They're gonna have to go into the assessment tabs, add an assessment, then print it so that they can actually do the payments. It's not gonna be.
And as providers. I don't know. And the triple A's are. As of October 1st, we will use the tool in a paper format similar to what you're currently doing, most of you. Now there are being a version or online access to that assessment. The existing site currently. This is a process we have to figure out. The AAA are the pass it up guidance. Personnel and providers that they contract with are subcontractors that do this process. So bear with us and is here to support you guys as well. There are extra steps, not to create extra work. That's not what we're going to do. This is to be attentive to what we need to do in being compliant to the events, with capturing the specific information for the consumers to be best practice and to provide them the best quality of service.
yeah. Would you, fail, so it needs myself important, what steps you go through now that are easier than what it will be? Because we're being as well, and we may be able to find out things we're not, but we may be able to make a change. So that it would be the same process that you currently have, where we download the detailed page.
So, right, you guys are familiar with a consumer record, right?
Right.
So when they go in, that very first page that has all of this information, that's what we're using for the assessment. So they just print that right there, and then they have the form that we created, which is still includes ADL, IADL, nutritional health. And they have that for everybody, you reassessment. So those are already printed, just like they. That details page is the consumer information. So they print that, mark out all the information, right into the. This way, you can't print the reassessment page without creating one or pretty simple. And it's transitioning for us right now, being that we do the assessment. It's going to be a little bit more difficult also for them to transition, because if they don't already have a UCIT in place, we're going to have to enter almost like a new for everybody, for every reassessment, every consumer certificate before we can start this UCIT.
We need to speak to our science seniors. It's here for you, but if you could detail specifically what would work best for you, then we meet with what cycles on.
Yes, you capture all of that for that new data on UCIT. We're referring to the universal consumer information for UCIT. So
Just use it. Use it.
So that information, and there is some data on the tool that can have to be in compliance with change. So it won't be a reassessment, but it can implementing the new school, which we have to then those down.
So when I'm thinking, well, it might be able to help, but I'm not certain. But it's just in my mind, at this point, it's picking up the that matches with the UCIT and dumping it in there, so that you wouldn't have to react. And that might work, but
But some of it actually math correct, so.
So mapping, definitely want to address, want to make sure that we're working outside the entity that math is relevant. So because other people in the audience might not have, I'm not able to refer to them that have something our staff to find ask questions. Thanks.
Okay, Kyle had a question.
It's not loud enough. I just, because it's not on your list of things, when are you gonna talk about the new ID number program?
Well, when we get to that slide.
Okay.
when we
I
get to
don't
that
see
slide.
it up there, so.
Oh, okay. That'll be after our 5-minute break. Okay. All right. Any other questions so we can keep on? Okay. So this is just a highlight of the, what we're gonna dive into now. So next slide. So what we did with this PowerPoint was we mimicked, for the most part, what is in the reference guide. So you have this 2 times. So we wanted to let you know that we developed the reference guide as like a job aid. We want you to wear it out. We want you, if you need to take it on your assessments to be able to, figure out like, what did that mean? We wanted it to be really, really, really useful. So particularly when you're using the printable version of the Universal Consumer Information Tool. So then the second part of the resource guide is the actual 2-column printable assessment. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at now. So with the next slide, we're going to do a quick review of the different clustered services. So as you know, there are registered services and unregistered services. So remember the list of these services for when we talk a little bit later, when we want your input. So the registered services are personal care, homemaker, chore, home delivered nutrition, adult daycare, health, and case management. So this list of services requires the most amount of information to be collected on folks, okay? You have to do the demographic and consumer characteristics. You need to do the ADLs and IADLs, nutrition. And that's what you have to do for those folks. So these are the folks that you need to do the most amount of work. Okay, next slide. So when we put this together, I wanted to be able to show you how many questions were associated with each section. Okay, so we delineated the title of each kind of topic of questions. So as you can see here, the assessment information is 3 questions. It's name, date of birth, I believe. And then there's a few questions about physical health. There's some basic information regarding where folks live, those types of things. Address, that should be under there. The consumer's emergency contacts. There's one question about benefits. And why we're asking that is we want to be able to make sure that folks are accessing all the services that are available for them. So I know SNAP, energy assistance, some of those types of services are listed just because you have access to folks who know how to get your consumer signed up for those things. There is one question, in section 1, it's on health insurance. And that is only to be asked if your consumers are inquiring about the SHIP services, so the Senior Health Insurance Program services. So unless folks are wanting to know about that, we don't need to collect that information. And then we talked about the emergency preparedness quite a bit in the previous trainings. So that is also a really critical thing to be able to collect. So that's section 1. Then we go into, with the next slide, the section 2, the ADLs and IADLs. And we spent a lot of time on that last time. So as you can see on this page, it just delineates out the ADLs, the IADLs, and the nutrition health assessment. And it gives that high level score. And we're going to go much more in detail regarding the scoring here in a little bit. And then section 4 is where the check boxes are about what services that you're going to be recommending for folks. Miriam.
In just a minute. I just wanted to talk for a minute about my background and how I ended up here. And also, then I'm going to let someone in the audience assess me, because I've never been assessed by the tool, and I'm definitely of age. So think about if you'd like to assess me, at least for the demographic part, and we'll do that. But I wanted to speak just a minute about consumers. And my first experience working with the state was years ago. In fact, it was under the Carruthers and King administration. And during that time, I was acting director for mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance abuse. So I had my first meeting with my staff, and there were 35 people in the room. And I talked about the consumer or the client that we were serving. And I said they needed to be the center of our work. In other words, if you ask the question, what I'm doing, does this serve the client? Does it serve the consumer? What I'm doing right this minute, am I doing the very best I can for them? And I didn't think much about it. We finished our meeting and I went on, and one of the staff members came up to me afterwards. And she looked at me and she said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." And she said, "You know, I worked here 25 years for the state, and no one has ever mentioned that I'm serving the consumer." And I thought about that, and it stayed with me for years, over 30 years, as you can see. And so today, what I want to make you aware of is you're really making data-driven decisions, but these decisions are based on consumer need. Some of you don't have all the services that maybe a consumer needs. That we're going to discuss at the 11 to 12 session. It's so important that we provide every service we can, or we refer to other outside services for these consumers, that we can support them. That it's a contact, a personal contact. It's not something where you hand someone a piece of paper. Maybe they can't even read at the level that the paper is, and you're expecting them to answer the questions. So if there's someone in the audience that would like to, the next slide, and it's in your paper packet, has questions, just like you, this is the tool. So it has the questions. And if someone would like to start asking me the question, just let Kathleen know. And I'm more than willing to answer them honestly.
We're independent in, on the Medicaid and Medicare questions, and those aren't something that they need to be answering. At this point, we have pushed for those to be answered. Our goal at North Metro, we're providing not the back here and her team, they're doing, direct services under North Metro for case management. Our goal is to eventually, Medicare bill for those. That way we can serve more consumers with the funding we're receiving. Also for any of you providers that know any of your consumers that could use case management, if you can, please direct them to Amanda and her team. They have a case manager in each region, and including Amanda herself, so there's 4 of them, and they're looking to expand, so they've done a great job on that. If you need Amanda's contact information, reach out to me or your liaison at the data center.
Great. So both Takeda and Kyle. So, so at the state level, we're giving the boundaries. And then for all of you in the audience, if you're not at their agency, you will be getting that specific guidance in the specific processes as required by your area agency. So, yeah, thank you so much. We want to make sure that it's there, but for those of you who are with non-metro, you will be getting that specific guidance, and I'm sure that
Just clarification based on what I received earlier. If they're being assessed for homemaker, do they have to do the nutritional or does that only have to be done for home?
the decision has been made that all of those cluster 1 services. So, but yes, I'll make sure, blah, blah, blah. The nutrition assessment needs to be asked because those are a much more vulnerable population. And they may not be getting meals, they overlap for that sort of. Yeah,
Earlier, it was stated they did, so I just wanted to clarify.
yeah,
No, they do.
yeah, thank you.
I can't speak for sure because this will need to be discussed between myself and Nancy and board. So I don't know if we're gonna veer away from them to ask all questions for congregate at this point. But one thing I've noticed through the referral process, from ALCSD is that there is consumers that are receiving congregate mail, but they're calling it ALCSD asking for other services that are currently being provided by the senior center. And so it is important if possible, if you feel the consumer may need extra services to that personal assessment, because you really don't know. They might come in asking for a congregate meal, but maybe they're struggling at home to get it. So also assess the situation.
Good point.
Now we know about microphones.
So I think we're gonna have our assessor right there. No,
Someone's gonna ask a question.
no. Done.
Want me to come out or just?
No, you can stay there, but we're gonna, ask some of these. I didn't even know that they were gonna do the, in-person assessment. They just sprung it on me. So thank you, Mary.
Good morning, Mary. How you doing?
I'm fine today. How are you?
Not too bad. It's great to see you again. So we're gonna be doing your reassessment today. So I just one of the first questions I want to ask you is, do you want to continue your current services?
Actually, I've never been assessed before.
Oh, you've never been.
I've never. Very first.
So let me go ahead and I have your information here, first and last name.
Mary,
Yep. And do you have your middle name, middle initial?
yes, it's K. K-A-Y-E.
The date that you register will be today. What is your date of birth?
10-12-46.
Thank you. And what is your primary phone number?
505-292-7011.
Thank you, Miriam. Do you have an alternate phone number, cell phone perhaps?
I don't.
Okay.
I just have the one cell.
And do you have an email address?
Yes. Miriam which is my first name, and that's spelled MIRIAM dot Morehouse, MOORHOUSE at yahoo.com.
And overall, how would you rate your overall health? Excellent, fair, good, poor, or not really sure information?
I would rate it fair. However, my doctor yesterday had a few concerns, so let's leave it at fair.
Excellent. And that was gonna be my next question. It's gonna be, have you seen your primary care physician in the last year? So yesterday?
Yesterday, I saw my friend.
Thank you. And have you fallen in the last 6 months?
Not in the last 6 months.
Okay,
I did have a fall a few years ago where I broke the 3 middle toes of my right foot and was wheelchair bound for 7 months.
have you had any, after effects from it since? Does it currently bother you still, or?
Yes, I have to be very careful walking, that I put both my feet down flat. And I took physical therapy for a while to help with that.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a notation of that. Thank you. Have you been hospitalized in the past?
I have never been hospitalized.
Oh, that's great. And may I ask what your marital status is?
I'm divorced,
Okay,
but I was married for 39 years, so I stuck it out for a while.
for a little bit. What's your primary language?
English,
And what is your gender?
female.
Good. And which of the following would best represent how you think of yourself? Lesbian or gay, straight that is not gay, bisexual? I don't know the answer, or you don't have to answer.
I don't care.
Fine, that's okay. And what would you say your ethnicity, Hispanic or Latino or not Hispanic?
Not.
Okay. And what's your race? American Indian or Mexican Native, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander or white?
I just found out from my sister last week that I am part Native American.
Oh, excellent. Okay. And let's see. Are you able to specify what tribal affiliation you're with?
It's a tribe in the Northeast. That part of my family came over on the Mayflower. So it's a tribe that begins with a W, but I don't remember how spelled or what the name is.
I'll see if I can get with our staff, see if we can do some research on it, and I'll contact you back. If you don't mind, and I can read you the names that we found.
Thank you so much. That would be great.
So is your household income at or below 100% of poverty threshold based on federal poverty guidance?
No, it's not because I'm still working.
Thank you. And do you have a veteran status?
No, I'm not a veteran.
Okay, was your spouse?
No,
Okay. And do you currently live alone?
no,
No, okay. How many people live in your home? Two. Thank you. And do you have a permanent housing?
yes.
Okay. With that, Miriam, could I ask what your physical street address is?
1305 Stagecoach Lane Southeast, Albuquerque, New Mexico, 87123.
Okay. And what county is that in?
Brilliant.
Thank you. And you know what your UCIT code is? Rural, non-rural?
It's non-rural.
Non-rural, okay. And is the address that you provided me, is that your mailing address too?
Yes.
Oh. And who is your primary or emergency contact person we could put down?
My daughter, her name is Sarah Brownstein, and that's Brown like the color, STEIN.
Thank you. And what is her home?
505-379-1144.
Excellent. By chance, Miriam, do you have a second emergency contact, somebody that we could contact in case your daughter's not available?
No, I really don't at this point.
Not at this time? Okay. Thank you. And I wanted to ask you some questions about benefits. I'm going to list you some benefits. You can let me know if you have these or not. SNAP, which are the food benefits,
No,
Social Security disability,
no,
supplemental security income,
no,
okay, general cash assistance,
no,
senior farmers market,
no,
subsidized housing,
no,
Section 8 housing,
no,
commodities,
no,
lighting. Which is
No.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the health insurance, and do you have any health insurance currently at this?
yeah,
Okay. Do you have any of the following types of insurance or benefits? Medicare Part A, Part B?
A,
Okay, Part A. Do you have Medicaid?
no,
Is your insurance employer based?
yes,
Okay. And if you could provide me with your Medicaid A number?
I don't have that here, but I could get it for you and give it to you later.
Okay, so then I'll make sure to give you my information so I can complete that. And we're gonna move on to emergency preparedness. Do you depend on electricity for medical needs, for example, like oxygen?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you use a wheelchair, scooter, walker, or cane?
No, I don't.
Can you get out of your home in case of an emergency?
Yes, I can.
If there is an emergency such as a power outage, will your home remain heated or cool?
No,
Okay. If there is an emergency such as a power outage, again, will you have clean water?
yes,
Okay,
that's all I'm stacking back gave a bottle of water.
thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you, and thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. What I was going to just emphasize again is this tool was not developed in isolation for those of you who have not been involved in the development. ACL had standards, the state had standards. We worked with the AAAs. We combined all of that into a crosswalk. Then WellSky developed this tool meeting all of those needs. And we are working with the AAA to make sure, like we said this morning, that the WellSky tool has everything required in it and any additional items that need to be corrected or revised. So I'm going to let Courtney take the next. Whoops, then I don't need to take one.
Yes, go ahead.
So, on the statement, it asks for the basic information on letters of keys,
Mm-hmm.
but it asks for their physical information before that. Is there any way we could get their basic information? Yes, and they'll say how.
Oh, sure. That's a really good suggestion. Okay.
And that's the paper form, correct? Yeah, yeah. The paper form is basically for us on the, we are. So, on the paper form. Exactly.
And we'll also make sure that we bring that up with,
It's based on the assessment,
It'll mirror that.
it'll mirror it because printed, those testings come out, when we print it from the actual consumer record, it comes out just like it is on the assessment form, and agent and dispense.
okay.
But yeah, it's kind of spread out, you have like name and stuff like that, and then way down have other.
Mm. Okay.
If you could collect some of that information, quickly, and get that back.
I have a list office, I can, for like,
Perfect. Hi.
They're gonna get tired of hearing. It's pretty good. On the lives alone, we have an issue where a lot of the women who live singly in Berlin County do not like to answer that question. They do not have public knowledge that they do not have something for security issue. Is there an option beyond not, which then we get dinged at ACL time because the report is not in, missing data as opposed to the consumer answered it, they just didn't answer yes or no? And that just poverty and lives alone tend to be the two questions that there's a lot of seniors that don't want that information public.
Right. Well, in one, it's two, 1, 2, 3, it's not publicly available.
They don't necessarily believe.
Right, no, I get it. Right,
I wonder if it's another option. Why don't you think of potential option that we meeting and email it to us, because we are still doing a better position. Well, that's something that could be equally realized. Another choice, I can't think of what it would be,
right.
but if you would
It just be chose not to answer as opposed to
let you have.
not answer, it goes into missing that.
And
And
then,
missing data is well, you know,
yeah. Yeah, I know that. All right, we got a few more questions here. That can be some right.
Hello, okay, sorry. I just have a couple of questions about the reassessment that he just did for you. So I noticed that one of the first questions he asked was, are you indicate why you fell? And then it asked, have you been hospitalized in the last 6 months? But it doesn't ask why. Is that something that they would put in the comment section and have a specific for writing?
You could definitely, but Corby was at why that hospital. But one thing she asked.
And I just have one more question. So it asked if having seen a primary care physician in the last year. This, under the emergency contacts, it no longer asks for the primary care physician. Is that not required? Okay, okay, thank you.
And probably what I just put Andy right now for all the questions. We have what we're doing in the pharmacy will as functional as possible. We're easily as possible. You know, how we with the finalizing. Perfect. So more questions.
Sorry, I'm not very good at this. I just wanted to ask you, you were talking about, needing more information. There's a lot of questions surrounding Catherine County. Who the Catherine County is their great, they're a lot. And so there's a lot of times when we're asking these questions, they're gonna refuse to answer. You know, it's none of your business. Too many questions, I don't need the service. So, and I would provide services to them. So is there a way to give us an option to say, you know, refuse to answer on all the questions, not just on certain?
For that,
Yes, please.
that is a decision the state or the feds won't make for you or your provider. You may have to work that through with your area agency on aging.
I'm here. I'm on. I'm looking at them. They don't have any food in their refrigerator, it's completely empty, you know what I mean? I know they don't have a car and they need to go get. How do I, but they're proud. I mean, our seniors are proud. I want to take care of them. I mean, I just want to make sure that they're giving us the tools we need to be able to do that.
Right. Davida.
So what we've had, or what I've had conversations with providers is if you go in and you notice a consumer per se that they're having trouble coming to a standing, but they're telling you they don't need any help, they're having to hold on to walls.
Hold on 1 second, please. Never mind.
Yeah, that is it, you know, like. It's important, you're making a great point.
Okay, so what we have told providers, is if you have a consumer that is prideful, all of us are prideful, we're prideful people, we don't like to admit when we're not able to do things. And in an assessment, especially in an in-home assessment, you're gonna see that a consumer may be having trouble coming from a sitting to a standing, from standing to a sitting, maybe walking down the hall, they're having to hold onto the couch or hold onto the wall. Yet they're telling you they can do all this stuff independent. If you're witnessing that, you can mark it on the assessment based off of what you've seen and then just document, in this case, I guess it would be in the consumer justification notes, or if you're doing it electronically, then you would put it in there. Based off of the assessor's observation, this is what I've seen, the consumer did report that they are independent, however, this is what the assessor noticed.
Yep, that's perfect.
I'm all that, the content plan, data, yeah, the Tom, Robert, Brian, and of course. Yeah, maybe, and data, staff, and family, people, very helpful.
I just wanted to piggyback off of what Kavita said too, is, and also don't ignore it. If, even if they don't answer it, don't say, okay, well, even though I saw it, I'm not gonna put it down. No, because that is something that can come back to harm that consumer later on. And, you know, that's something that you'd have to live with if, God forbid, something bad, drastic did happen. My question was on number 4 regarding the hospitalization. Is the reason that it's only a yes and no is it more so because of HIPAA rules? And that's why we can't ask for specifications.
Right.
Not me, right? That's why we're careful. I know you as providers will not to document the diagnosis on the assessment case. I want to make sure that's clear. We're not telling you to capture all of that detailed information. This consumer based on the assessment observation. But it's important to give some information as the assessor, as the data said, during your assessment, even if they answer in such a way that you know there's still very clearly dependent on your having an indicative transition from. It's important. We're trying to buy that or delivered meal, and yet it's not scoring this budget. Being eligible for a moment. We have to justify that by that observation. What you
I wanted to add one thing, we do see often we do see medical terminology does come in. One of the things, rather than saying have arthritis, you can really elaborate, rather than putting they have arthritis, elaborate on their condition, how whole things for long periods of time, their group is weak, things like that, more allowing us to see why they really need service. You guys are doing this assessments, you guys see them in a face-to-face setting, we don't, so just really honestly, rather than putting the medical term, elaborate how their conditions affect them to prepare them for their daily living activities.
That's really great. Thank you so much. Okay, are we good? Yes, perfect. Thank you. So what we tried to do with this, and I'm not going to read all of this to you. We really tried to give you good instructions on scoring. And I know that something that was brought up on the 10th was that it was for the ADLs, it was from 1 to 6 or 0 to 6. So we did a lot of research in finding what would be good terminology to associate with each of those numbers. So you can see what we put here. And we'd really like for you to be able to take a look at that and give comment back to Kyle or Davida, or come up to us and just let us know, we wanted to define it better for you because we are changing that ADL. Yes, of course.
Well. Because it's not in the database, before our report, obviously we can pushing it out. So we need information from you, so a determination can be made on what kind of that's going to happen, and it has to be this next.
And for that one specifically, will be an update to the resource guide. And then the next slide is on the ADLs. And this is just a little bit more information on, the ADLs, what they mean, where you can get, there's a link to the website where we retrieve that information. So okay, so we're only in cluster 1, so we could take all day. What questions do you have about ADLs and IDLs? Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I just had a question. I was looking at this. And I know that you had such a score if you were one, not. And that was going over that, right, in the last meeting. In this, it says 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the IDLs. Is that going to be updated to reflect for 1 and 4?
So that's the, so for the IDLs.
It will just help us to be able to make a determination.
So the ADLs are 1 or 0. The IEDLs are 1 to 4. Oh, okay. Okay, we're gonna have to sit down at that one file.
It's when I did the printout on the form that you have, they're just numbered. Answer 1 is 1, answer 2 is 2, answer 3 is 3, answer 4 is.
Okay, let's get rid of that on the tool.
What I did was I went through and I changed it to, at the end, I just put in parentheses 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, whatever the codes are. Because on a printed form, on an electronic form, it will score for you. On a printed form, you need to know what those numbers are. So if you could just include the Loudon Road scale, what the number is, other than, and don't number the actual respondent. Because I think that.
I'm making a note of that for those numbers to be taken off. I didn't even notice that, so thank you so much. So we'll take, let me show you.
Paper format. Thank you for pointing that out. Paper format. Right, so in the system.
Right. We'll figure out a workaround for that, but thank you. That's so important. Okay. Other questions? Because I think we're not going to dive deep in this because we have a half hour left. And you still need a break. Should I give you a break? Yes.
And this is gonna be.
If you're needing to be, and needing to market thing, there's, or
Denise,
What?
Denise,
Yeah.
you're on the online assessment, there are 1, 2, 3, 4.
On the IAL,
Yeah. The love brownie scale, we answered 1, 2, 3, 4 on the assessment, I'm looking at right now.
We will speak of that.
yeah, let me check.
Okay, we're gonna break it to 10:30. Let's, back together, 10:40.
And you might want to go over to the, our building after. And examine. And there's only.
You done?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I'm just gonna let it run then. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're right. Yeah.
Yes. You're welcome. Yeah. So hard to hear. Thank you for saying, yeah.
I go Dad's here. So I'll have,
No, you're right.
okay.
Well, I don't know, I'm gonna, I suppose. You know, that's, there's like a lot of. I think we're on like 50. I think we were like around 50, 45. That'd be 5 minutes.
Yep. Well.
It's something under, just, there's a link from here. Just try to understand. And it's not that. So everything else is. Yes, I was coming. There is. It's the audience. It's a bit of a thing about the time. There's that. And then we didn't.
Oh.
I think it's an exit, says an exit. Like taking 60, 70, like early,
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, while you're getting back to the checkpoint. You're welcome. Oh, good. It's not hard. It takes you. Crazy.
Yeah. My dog has.
Figure out who's standing down here.
You could? You want to try it? That works better? Because this camera's supposed to be for you all, so if that works better, go for it.
It seems better.
Yeah,
The background's just, we're so bright.
I know.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's really us.
Yeah.
But I think that this has more contrast than with the half screen.
Yeah. So this actually might be better. Yeah, and even
Better?
that, I think that.
I think that looks better. Let me see.
Yeah, I think that looks all yours. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, make perfect. There to there. You guys are really doing. How dare you? Did I get asked you to leave the computer somewhere? What, God. God, Freeman. I got six.
Okay, cool. I think that is my. Yeah.
Okay. You want it back? In there? Moving again?
We'll see on the next break.
No, I'm gonna get her to put it in the back. Didn't hurt.
Yeah, maybe best.
Yeah, my brain wants to just start. The whole introduction to it. So this song is able, like, for us. Focus. Yes, so it's way better. Easier looking. Also, I'm closer, so if I have to like feel better as because there I was off. I get closer, you're seeing my boobs. Right. Right. You're no longer seeing my head. The wrong parts go out in there. Like,
And so it's more of a focus point for getting a little bit, let's get it, see us straight. Is that okay? Well, awesome.
Oh, yeah. Not seeing the tower.
Just run.
Right back in the right. Right. Kick it out of the way.
Jump across the road.
Well, it's harder. It's all very physical, so it's not really not. Yeah. Yeah, so I think, yeah, I think I can. You don't do. Okay, let's go. I think the ball is. See, today, almost see how perfect it is.
Yeah.
All right, friends, maybe it's starting again.
I don't see it.
I've been picked off the case, I'll take over.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah, great.
First, if they're getting settled, I just want to thank everybody for excellent questions. We've done and developed that. We have a list already to update Wells Guide. We have a list going to update the reference guide. We, so years ago, openness and not that I'm just worried about that at all. I am so interested, so I'm gonna give the time over to Jason. Well, what do you want to do?
I can carry on with the day there.
So whoever's going to be doing one thing. So big part. So I have a really great question that's why we're kind of shifting our, we're shifting a little bit. Because I think that this will be incredibly valuable. So, you don't know the answer to this.
Okay, we, and I'm not particularly on TFA one, in our area, we have 4 different types of assessments. Case management, proposed assessment, we have contract, we fairly, they're pyramid. So if someone is case managed, or if someone has a service that has been case managed, and walking to a representative months later, they have to be reassessed. Because they've already done the full assessment 4 weeks earlier, 4 weeks earlier. Is there any reason? Or do they just take assessment? After the change in life, something has to go with that.
They shouldn't have to reassess at all. because they had that reassessment done, with you said 4 services. In that case management, they get the full assessment, so they should be put on that next year assessment.
Case management costs for the kind of highest, scoring and.
If they have plus one, plus service, there's no cluster level, they already have plus. Unless,
Different.
you know, and for.
Yeah, it's not, yeah.
The other question that I had, on February 1st, they hit their number. Sorry. They are in becoming February 1st or I'm saying short. They get the new number at that point. How do, well, I guess, how we communicate that to everyone that they have.
Correct.
Because the numbers generally correct.
And Bernalillo County, the city of Alvin specifically, because you guys are using scanners, delivered meals, and there's barcodes, and there's things that you're gonna have to implement, to see that ID and that roster is changing with every ID. And the reason for an ID change to this assessment tool is because of the social that's included, the last 4 digits of their social included within that consumer identification number. So it was gotten a lot of complaints from consumers. We've gotten a lot of recommendations from not only the ACL, but other state departments about the consumer ID and the fact that ours was still including a very sensitive identification. So it will change upon a reassessment or a new assessment. Over first, you have a new consumer coming in, it's going to be a system generated ID. If you have a existing consumer coming in October 15th, getting reassessed, it will then generate a new ID. Question?
Our level is for us on the case managers for non-medicine. If we do an assessment for just case management, he's supposed to tie them back to the senior center that's closest to them. Do we put that on our assessment?
Correct.
Because for our, like, we are doing assessment, some people that are not in any system yet. So.
So we don't want consumers to have to be, this is an invasive assessment that we don't want a consumer having to repeat themselves 2 or 3 times. The fact that non-Metro is providing a direct service with case management is great. You heard me say that at the onset of the meeting. They're filling in a gap that we've known has been existent for the last many, many years because of where case management has been offered or where it hasn't been offered. So the fact that you're doing that direct service is great. However, the consumer themselves shouldn't have to repeat the assessment to get connected with the meal program or transportation or other services. So you should, with non-Metro, with the AAA, be able to identify the consumer and in the system as the primary provider versus the secondary provider. What's the term?
Primary and secondary. One of the things, so kind of my concerns. One of my concerns, first off, we got the ID on that stuff. But my second concern is, well, really it's getting back to that ID. You're gonna have 2 providers that are going to be able to, they might be the right thing, but if we've seen where gotten the as it's maybe not so very about duplicate consumers, we already experience, which the neighbor and social.
I am too very concerned for different reasons, because during the pandemic, during the fires, during the flooding, when we were trying to go to call consumers, their phone numbers were not correct. Their addresses were not correct. So you are hearing today that is one of the most important reasons why we implemented this standardized tool, because that data has to be
that contact made for that concern. So for the obvious reason that you were saying, Vita, that I was even concerned that when the providers were getting those consumer information sheets for each consumer that they were basically, they were verifying that information or updating it. And so many of those phone numbers were not being corrected.
And no, you're correct.
Yeah.
And I am. And one thing that we've done in our office, and I know probably upset at times, you know, we're not trying to nitpick if we got missing information, there and having that information, even down to the present. But that is one thing, and then the other thing, you know, we do have case management, and it's not always case management. In the same area, you got one bills and another one community community services. That one Peterson doesn't provide those services. And I think that it's saying they shouldn't be doing leading is where a lot of times and that was why yes by other and it's just so you feed on something that's probably not. Well, this here's.
There are some service areas like hotels, where you have one provider doing transportation and then the other provider doing meals. Who is the primary provider? The meals or the transportation? So that service is a very different one. And yes, I'm not saying I want a duplicate assessment. So that has to be, determined between those two providers, who serves the primary and who serves the secondary.
Who made it determine is one who's where the like some either different where the scratch live. If they're living in this area, but if it's more we'll make the secondary being on base according to the higher service. For better base services such as complicated transportation, we'll go with the complicated for transportation secondary. However, in a situation where it's, they're both in services, I will wait for someone. For service center, and then meals from the business. At that point, that's.
But is it easier?
No, it's not very consumer.
We have to be focused on the end user. It's our end user, the consumers, that I don't want to have them go through a second assessment when it's not needed. So it's really the providers communicating it, developing a collaboration when it comes to a consumer. The same situation happens in Bernalillo County, where city may have done the assessment, that same consumer is going up to Rio Rancho and taking an activity or transportation or a meal. And that there really needs to be that collaboration amongst providers to see who's the primary versus the secondary. It's not, I mean, it's a one-off, that you guys are, AAAs are gonna have to really work to address, but the consumer ID is going to change, and it really has to do with identifiable information, and we need to make this change now. So anyone being a new consumer on October 1st moving forward will have a system generated ID upon reassessment on the annual basis, unless there's the circumstances with that older adult has changed. They've fallen, they've gone into hospitalization, they went to rehab, and then they're having to be reassessed shorter than that year because of that circumstance. I see you. Hold on. Now I've got my train of thought. Go ahead.
I guess I have a few questions. One of the questions is for us, case management. You're saying we don't want to do multiple assessments. So say there is a person who's already been assessed, but they didn't mark down that they needed case management. Do we have to do a reassessment, or does the data center just add that to the
Because
It's a higher level because of the cluster service and the IADLs, ADLs and TRIP have to be maintained, so it's likely gonna need to be a reassessment for that higher level service. But you really are gonna have to make that determination based on the circumstance that you have.
There's probably gonna be time where you're doing, and since that if there's an audited by, and you guys do case management, the case management team, they can form that circuit, but they don't meet with them daily, where the congregate prior to that. So it's a situation that requires to assess the bid, more so than the consumer. But that congregate or right top will be assessing that service for one. And like I said, I've seen cases where it was happened by with them.
But if that higher level of service reassessment was done, then that congregate for transportation can still happen and then not have to be reassessed on that. So, yeah, right.
What's in that case is if there's hunger meals that case management assessment. Assessment, copy the hunger meal assessment. Create a new assessment. And all the hunger questions be in, you don't have to necessarily ask the question. Yeah. You just have to ask questions that are above the level. The local level requires.
And with the with the system online assessment, with this being available, a lot of that is gonna pre-fill. Pre-populate.
I just wanted to mention that I heard last week something that was disturbing to me. And this is, there was a family, and I'm not gonna say which family, but the husband and wife have been going for 2 or 3 years. It came time for a reassessment. But the reassessment was so much work and effort for them. They decided they were not gonna go back to the center. Because they didn't want to do this reason.
And a lot of our providers call us. Being that the plans were already, they were already. And I know there's things. But some, there's trying to do this. They're gonna is it gonna make the job of their staff or staff? Are they gonna be?
And I get that, short staff, I get that, and I get what Lee said earlier about the seniors that, are prideful, don't want to answer these questions. I get that, and there should be in the system, a way to bypass some of that when they're using some of that, but it will go against you, it will go against the complaint, it will go against us. If we have missing data, and how can we advocate for additional federal funds if we don't have the data? So it's how they build the report with that consumer to explain the reason and the importance of completing the assessment. I get it. I've been there. I know how it is to sit with a consumer and be able to complete an assessment. It's important that you build that rapport with that consumer, with that elder, with that senior to explain the reasoning and the importance of completing the assessment. This is important information for them for us to be able to obtain on the consumer so we can identify what is most in need and so that we can comply with funding and get them the most appropriate services. So it's how that's being relayed. And if you're going in an assessment with a checklist, I have 15 minutes and that's my transportation. I have to get to the kitchen, my hairnet's on, my gloves are on. They're gonna feel that, they're gonna see that. Handing the paper to get to complete their own assessment is not okay. So I understand it takes time. I understand there's frustration. Might be turned away, but it's not because if they would have been explaining the reason and the importance, then maybe they would have sat through that assessment.
And I just want to say one other thing, both non-metro and metro in the state, I've been with the department for about 8 years. And for those of you who watch the trainings, I say I'm the one that pushes the button and sends all the data up to ACL. And I'm the one who say who does that. However, let's look back. And this is something that's really positive that you have done. I would say 3 years ago, or maybe 3 or 4 years ago, with ACL, and when we review us, we would have maybe 6 years. We would have over 40% of our data missing. 40%, in some areas, over 50% of the data missing. So both AAA diligently to help support providers that make providers realize why this.
And during our last, OAP mission, how long was yeah, fine, like 15.
In some areas, it was zero.
Maybe 15, like overall. So that is coming from the recovering bed perspective. Congratulations. That is fabulous.
And that's what this, okay, it's the term I used in the beginning. We want to make the consumer the centric part of it, but you need to make decisions based on data. So you're making data-driven decisions to provide the best services you can for the consumer. That's as concisely as I can think to say it. And it is complex. There is not a question. But we're here to support you and we appreciate all of your recommendations.
Data equals dollars. They preach that. All the time. Data equals dollars.
All information that they need to be you know, that's really, it's her mind. And she-
I have to recommend that all of our team
Yeah.
go to that.
She wants it, sure.
That data equals.
I see that it equals dollar. We really only have a couple minutes left. Oh, and we have a question, yes.
Okay, so going back to your finding orders and learning to change those up whenever they, if it's a new individual, we get that deadline that we have to meet, right? But then if it's a reassessment, then there also could be issue that we may see at that time. So is that going to still continue or is that number going to stay with them? Being down,
That will always be their number then.
okay, second. Going back to that situation as well, so. I don't know if anybody has ever looked at an individual, native marriage experience, but oh my God. If you don't have all of the information, like kind of that's gonna be really, really difficult to go through and. Would there be a possibility or a way that your licensed individuals who that are registered to be able to utilize the system? To still be able to look them up by that TOB and that social number, but that not necessarily their service providing number. That's not going to be something that's going to go out to the public on your scan. Because that's really important, it gives the ability to respond how you need it.
Absolutely, and with the AAA not having to enter, when we get to that point with providers being able to do the assessment online, it's gonna free up some staffing for the AAA that hopefully they are able to identify the staff person that will be able to clean up some of those duplicate consumers in the database that we're deactivating some that are duplicated. So let me ask Crystal, Davida to answer that as far as the lookup, because you should be able to look on that consumer and identify them by DOB. Now, I'm not saying, you know, want to go away from social security, like, we don't want to ask them about what class of benefits, but you should be able to search it. I'll let Davida.
There is an answer right now. Date of birth, date, if the name is correct, if their last name has changed, Can I say the advantage?
Right.
Are very. frequently informed. But yeah, there is an advanced search option. It was down that. Stuff like that, so if you come to us. That's one of the things. Being of the database. We frequently we merge it all. One of the things, another thing, Crystal. For that, it's not. Scan loss to loss with you. You have the option. I don't really.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you guys have the option, just as the ID also.
Well, we want to be back, I'm just. A little bit more near that you kind of. Maybe necessarily having your name. On that boxes, so that's kind of why it's on that. So the second part of this is, we're looking at going to your assessment. Okay, so for situations like case management and congregate meal, all of these other things, it would be very much so beneficial for anyone that has access to working the system for these easier searches for these individuals, so that they can look up and see what current services they're operating stuff before they even go out to do an assessment, even they may not even need to. Right? I mean to, yes, no, I'm just saying, I did it when her client, right, in my building, and I can look that. Out, she's already, she's actually, we're golden, right? Absolutely. Yeah. So then back to the field. And like I said, going back to the that I'm not necessarily know their assigned number with their names. Right.
The issue really with the social security number. The complaints were that it's very. When you ask someone, they printed on a card. You have your name, their date of birth, their security effect, all in one location.
And I'm not arguing that, I totally get it, and it would save us a lot of arguing with us. I'm just asking them to be in the data system. To be this way, we can check my date of birth, that is,
But it's not gonna be. When I had someone over in the area that worked on a native database, and she cleaned out over 2,000 different, no, she didn't personally, but she found 2,000 errors and well. And she sent them to the AAA before both of your time, and they cleaned them up. Or that did whatever they needed to do, and she found her father who'd been dead for 5 years. I mean,
and
that's the nature of this. I remember when I was over at the edge before I came to aging in Wisconsin. We cleaned up the database for all of the students in New Mexico, and it was like very important. You could pick names and you would have 5,000 the same person. It is not a simple task. So I want to make it seem simple. But once we get it organized and finished, I think you will appreciate it. I think it's gonna be a task.
I'm so sorry. And we're gonna do it obviously. But I don't understand, like, I understand what you're saying, you pick that to get out. I'm not sure why she's putting that. First option. Because I was looking, you just said that you just part of the business. That with the IDs being a generic ID, we're gonna do that. That's a huge scare of mine, and I feel like it's gonna be, and I know myself, if I've been in this. Yeah, you want cars. And so I just figured that that's the problem.
But with some of the people that don't get their social, and they can last for their phone number, the phone number may change. And you have that individual too.
If you do that first, now, if the board makes. You can put in names, birthday, one, a bad again. But if that data should be able to what it is, and then if it doesn't say anything, then you can throw it back. If that person shouldn't, it's going to take more words, but all the information you need to get that number in, but that person is okay, acceptance. I think the question being, it's that's the. We have various here. Some then on January first, we get that. They have 30 throughout the year, no that things be done, assessments for higher level need to be done. When it comes to January first, the following year, wait until that day passes. Then we can get it. Wherever, then I'm really nothing in October or extend. But then about to be conservative. So that's again, standard, whatever he said the standard, but it should be before late. Right.
All right,
Yeah.
So just a quick question about seniors going to different things. I have an idea. Do you know about doing cards? Like an ID card, like El Dorado has their ID. They have the number and then a picture on it. They can go to different things. It has their ID right there. Just.
Yeah, we urge that that be looked at. Must, of days, by private, issue cards. I think those that use. My senior center. Yeah, I think the issue is to express that seniors attending congregate, forget their ID, show up, their ID. There's an issue there too. I know a lot of seniors that are going to frequenting, some of the casinos or stores have those, cards that they use that get discounts. So I think it's something that we could probably put it happen, that we looked at it as a service scan. Because of the tripling of units, I think at the pilot site that we're doing, so there was an issue with that. But I think that that's a good idea.
Microphone.
Yeah. Okay, so we do have membership cards, but the membership number is date of birth and last 4 digits. So that's gonna have to change if it's generated. What we do is a short form. We still have a short form for visitors from Tularosa, Las Cruces, Cloud Rock, so that we can capture most of that information in an assessment or reassessment has to be conducted, or we still gonna allow us to use the short form. I didn't hear anything about short forms.
And that's not anything that we're issuing. I think that's been more of a non-metro play, use of short form, metro play, those kinds of things. So that will be a determination of the big guys. That short form, because you do have some that are frequent.
At this point, after another, we do kind of still. Short. Having a little bit more of the information that we're like on their property, so I'm actually in our mind to get all of them. It can change it and working trying to get it standardized. That we can.
Okay, another question. So eventually it's gonna be online, correct? No more hard copies, or can those that are comfortable with hard copies continue the hard copies and scan to the AAA? Is that gonna be an option?
That is still an option with an end goal of, to be determined of it being on the system. So you will have a paper form to be able to complete those paper documents, but with a phased approach by the AAAs to extend the database. Well, if it is a shift for non-metro, because they're using all of that being scanned to them for them to be integrated. And until the providers have the training from the AAA on an additional training, not from the Universal Consumer Information Tool, but additional training on how that's going to, and when that's going to take place. It's gonna have to be a phased approach.
Okay, so we're going back to providers entering the data. That was a long time ago, and we did that. So that's what we're doing. We're going back to provider entering the data and not transmitting to the AAA data center anymore. Is that what we're going to?
That's a streamlined process. Providers to be able to enter consumers into the database to register. Now, again, it's working with the AAA on their process to have that done.
I have a question piggybacking off of that. And you're talking about phase out process by state. What is the workable line of your time frame? I could split that with myself. Where does that live? The splitting. I mean, that's been a huge part of it. So this person. How long did you anticipate it taking for us to get thinking over?
And I can't answer that myself. I think the fact that non-metro has 3 PSAs, they oversee in many providers in very rural areas, that it's not going to be a PSA. And when I say it really is going to be a working progress to get to that end goal of providers entering in. It's the database and consumer information. It may mean that one gets there early, than the other county next door, but it could be because of the connectivity.
And I wasn't here when the transition or prior to the data center and being data part of it. Obviously, now where I see this lady right here, and understand that we're going backwards. My understanding of was the reason for the transition or the change was due to the information that we needed not being collected. And that's why the data center took over that part of the assessment.
And I think that's why contract took away, right, add additional language added, because it is the responsibility of the provider contracting for that program to provide that service. It is a federal service, federal program. And so maybe contracted directly provides now responsibility to let that down. And entering it into the database is part of that process. I hope that it will be streamlined, that it have the capability to be able to take a iPad or a notebook and be able to actually do it live. Many other service areas have been able to do that. So I think we will get there. Are we going to get there within a year? Probably not. We'll still have your paper tool, your paper, it's going to be a standardized tool with this tool.
Davida, I was gonna answer one question. I still see a huge amount of work data set because of all of the OS requirements. You're still going to have to evaluate everybody's work, every provider's work, every, how they enter the data, what input, and the OS system is not changing. It's still funky this year, like where I have to open it up for PSA2, then open it,
And I really thought it was, I have that in here. And where could the system exactly? It would probably be, I think I can figure that with providers, they want to base that evaluating data. So they'll be involved in that offer by training. And then also one of these courses marketing is so verified data, there's gonna need to be some kind of process. They're going to be indirectly themselves system. So part of my thought process at this point is how are we gonna know when and there is some. That way we can go in and make sure we don't take this person. That absolutely, you know, are they able to facial test or good, so right now it's kind of, I guess. My thought process is how do we fit into this?
Well, you're leading it, not getting in, you're leading it. So that's validating, but it's, setting up a system in place so that you know when they're entering. Or so that you're able to, on that front end, be able to.
I'm not sure who did it today, but they were one from my team, is there a way we could get a patient? I don't know.
So we're gonna be out of that, to see if you can get a generated, notification when a provider benefit. Well, it's not, yeah.
And I know we have a lot of really manual licenses that are pretty big. And what I would say is, if you, but it's not, so this is just, I would look at the process and do a process now, look at any gaps and where you would check the data. That was the suggestion, but then it's going to be a process for everybody. And there's benefits, always be changes. And then there's, yeah. So I appreciate the support.
And then can we continue with the slides and do the question?
Yeah, we're actually, that's tracking through some of the last slides.
So what I'm gonna do, yes, we have one more question, so please.
So I'm in Signal County and we have a lot of our areas that are very rural and no internet access. So I know you like this streamlining all to be all electronically, but you know, are we still gonna be able to use the paper form because we are gonna have a lot of clients? I can think of 4 areas specifically where we have clients that have no internet access. We don't have internet access out there. So we're gonna need to be able to still use the paper forms in those areas.
Absolutely. A lot of the providers are gonna have that hybrid area, county area. Be able to do fully online.
So it's not gonna be as streamlined as possible.
And if they streamline, if you streamline with, let's say, a assessment, the process is gonna be different. And again, it's not gonna be good try to, it's just maybe just have a where, you know, you just have pockets of the state that still don't have that activity and getting on as we saw with her. So we're gonna have to really be flexible and adapt.
And Davida, and all of you in really rural areas, I would think that the ways will need to set up what those standards are about that. And that would be conversations you have with the AAA on, you know, we have 4 areas where there's no internet. And I know we have clients that have no internet. So that process will be then developed through the AAA.
And that's gonna be, you said, finances that. So we're not wanting them to change their home.
Yeah. All they will do is complete the task on the tablet. The tablet is not even necessarily connected. Go in, you can just complete a form. It's like if you have a look at your computer and don't hook it up to the internet, you can still do Word and you can still complete this form. Then you take your tablet back and then upload whatever you when you go to the internet.
So any last questions? We're gonna,
Okay.
I think we would be really remiss. I know the questions are so incredibly important. One thing I want to be able to do is have Jacob take us to the agenda for the provider input. It's the second to last slide. And this conversation, it really does fit into it. And then we'll come back. We want to get your comments. And we will come back to other questions after this, but I want to honor this time. So I'm gonna start us off. There's, Jacob? All right, I got thumbs up. All right, so it's a critical piece of the development of state plans to get input from the providers, to get input from the older adults, to get input from the communities. And we wanted to be able to take this opportunity to talk with you about the state planning process. Today's is going to give some information on current status, service account, and then service delivery collaboration with the community. But one thing I wanted to start off with real quick is what I spoke about earlier. You're the experts. You're the ones with the relationship with the clients, with the consumers. You know what they need. Okay. If you're seeing gaps within your communities and you provide pick on nutrition and transportation, if you see there's a bigger need within that community, let us know that. There's also going to be an opportunity for you all to reapply for your funding through your area agency on aging. Apply for what you've always applied for. Like if you know that there's a need for case management, if you know that there's need for homemaker services or chore services, apply for it. You know, get those dollars into your area so that, was it a phone? Maybe it was just me. But talk with your leadership about what you're seeing out there, and you know, talk with your director, talk with the VEDA, talk with the AAAs about we want to apply for this other funding because you can't do those services without the funding. Okay, was that good?
That was good.
All right, I'm gonna give it to my friend Lisa.
It was good, and it brought up a point. So I'm gonna start with the, as you heard me say earlier, we're working on the state plan. And that itself is really task and compiling that information to send to APL for a 4-year period. And what we know today, it may be very different on information that we will have and need to have in 2028. So we're going to do our very, very best to really identify what are the years in need of here in New Mexico and how can we meet those needs, and really working with the AAA, working with the providers, and identifying what does that look like. And so over the last 5 years, been fortunate in that every year when we go to the legislative session, ways to include the Title VI providers, the tribes of the nation, and we received those additional funds and back into where we've seen its gaps in services or expansion. And we asked, no different than this year for FY 26. We were asked to look at increasing our consumer base because we're sitting at 10.7 total population. Our population as of a year ago was 512,000 seniors, 60 plus, 512,000 seniors. And we were serving, as of last year, 10.7% of our population. I know what healthcare authority has on their roll for those that are eligible for SNAP. I know what healthcare authority has on dual enroll for Medicare and Medicaid, and I know where our numbers fit. I am very proud that I would say that we had an increase this last year of the consumers being served overall. But I also know we need to plan because our population is growing in all areas of the state. And we know that their needs at home are great and there are limited services. They love the meals, although we are needing to have this high quality service. I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish, but there is a high standard of high quality services being provided. But I also know there are needs, there are things that are asking for transportation to go to ongoing frequent medical appointments, cancer treatments, dialysis, and you're having to tell them, no, you're sorry, you don't have the capacity, you don't have driveway. I know that, I'm getting calls. I'm sending over to the AAA asking, look up this, and you know, that there's been some complaints. I know you're doing your very best, I also know what customers are asking for, and those notifications are important. We also know that there's a specialty medical is a huge issue, and when they get a specialty medical appointment and it might be an hour for me, we have first service branch, but I'm sorry, please transport you here from my area to the outline. Does that help the consumer? No. Did you know that they can go into outline for that specialty appointment? But I also know that you, as providers and tax directors, are putting on permanent gloves, answering the phone, dealing with transportation requests all day lunch on the service line, right? I get that. But it's what can you do now to really identify what would it mean if you get hire an additional transportation driver? I'm saying that you don't deal with call-ins and might have to cancel transport with cleaner, we get that. But what would it mean that you did a specialty driver for medical things for some of those long distance transport? What would it mean for you to hire a part-time worker for short services? For specialty short services to cut wood for seniors that are on wood still alone. Up in Seattle, many of our seniors are only on wood stove. And they can't get their wood from outside. So it's those types of services that really challenging many of our providers to really look at over the next 4 years. What can we do? I know you do a lot. I will never say just, because you do a lot. I want you to look at what your consumers are in need of. Can you hire a part-time homemaker? Not saying you have the funding right now or next month, this month, but what would it need for you to hire a part-time homemaker? To do some sort, to do some light housekeeping, to keep that scenario on the conversation. So really think about that and we'll start to respond to the RFP that the AAA. This is important. We need to be able to put into our state plan what that looks like. We've talked about innovative ways to get services to you guys as directors and being available and doing social training have been great. But we also, as you see today, have asked you guys to be more in-person because we want you to have we want you to have the tools that you need to do the best first. So every time I go back to the legislator and request the funding, and I was asked to hit a 15% mark. I gave them the amount that we needed. They told me to hit the 30% mark. What would that look like? Gave them that number. It was an estimate. I covered the law. I gave an estimate of what we thought would get us to that mark. We have to bring it down. The reality, is that we have to bring it down. So with funding from the state, we're 3 times over in federal funds. I hate to say this, but I'm going to continue to ask the feds to put funds where they need to be. We can only do so much at the local level, at the state level to put more funding into these services, but others to deserve it. And so when you get visits, and Farmington doesn't care, right? They had a visit last week that I was to the, but when you get some of your senators represented at your centers, it's really important that you're saying, we need more capital funds to support this. So when I'm asking you to look at what does that service look like in 2 years, right? Can you provide that part-time homemaker, part-time driver? That's what the discussion's about, okay? So I know I talked a lot about it, and I want to get the pen. Okay. You called me. Last week.
I didn't sound this. That's a good. I found a hummingbird.
Okay, so any questions about that? So as you start to get the RFP packets and requests from the AAA's to think about. Crystal?
So I need for is to project your cost that that's going to take beyond 2000. Is that something for our RFP process that we would also include the funding for the equipment that this is going to take? Because I know we did, we know capital.
Yes.
Yeah. Services that way.
Yes, you would be putting that in. But it wouldn't be that you're asking for the funding under that. You would be saying, I need another vehicle to be able to provide this. And through capital outlay request, I'm asking for additional vehicle. So yes, okay, the you take in now and the things. So you would be asking for it this next round in planning for it. What's in your application? Absolutely. What's on your application? I saw a lot of heads nodding of the importance of having these kinds of other additional services. Is that something you're seeing in your service area? I know many slums in here in areas are still hauling water.
So for AAA, we cover the whole state except for San Diego County. So we go into San Diego County, we go for us in case management, we see the huge influx of the so we see with a whole lot of cases, one provide that situation, non-metro, but I think there's more of a need for it and we survive, you know? So like, I think it's funding needed for all of it. If you ask for funding for all of it, we need more money for the housing, we need more money for base management. For
Housing is different and there's new state department for housing. Addresses that because it's not under capital outlay, how, you know, your request for capital, that's not there. Home improvements is an issue. And so we definitely want to address that. But the funds that we asked for is really for older American Back services. So, case management, yes. That's already getting, you know, funds, both state and federal for, because a lot of that gap, huge gap. You only have 3 service providers that provide case management in a very specific area, so I'm what you want. Outside of that, you know, for care and in pockets, right? So it was important that non-metro system is really doing that. But what about the makers? What about shore? As I said, many of these areas that are really goes along, they don't have actual support. They don't have their, you know, brother or their son or a nephew or a niece or someone that can help get the wood in it. Or much less, you know, so, or homemaker. So those are units that were said, but the funds that we asked for, the additional funds requirements, are going to be very specific for home stay services. Although I also know that the numbers are changing for congregants and delivered meals. Patients, and I think that they're balanced. And don't forget about legal services. Non-metro things there with some of the legal services, grant funding that we grants, and that's great, but that's limited. What about 2 years from now? That the seniors are going to still have some legal issues, especially with what we're doing now, right?
Denise, I wanted to point out, those of you who are case managers and you're talking to the people, do you keep track of the other services that maybe they're inquiring about. My thought is make sure you're bringing that to your leadership so that they're hearing what the need is. And so that, because you're a play employee.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so you're a play employee. Make sure you're bringing that back in and identifying the areas those needs are coming from. Because what we want to see is the dollars that go to the area agencies and aging, all of those dollars, that it's not just in these few different buckets that we're seeing more for healthcare services. We're seeing more for these services maybe folks are really needing. So that's really important work that you're doing. Thank you.
We've also been working with UNM, on, and on community health workers. So we also have some severe community health workers that are FMT or system employment program, as well as their hero program and hero program. So they're strategically kind of placed right now, in around the state. But the community health workers are also identified needs of seniors, so providers may be getting referrals from community-based community health workers, you know, managers or community health workers may refer those here to the healthcare authority. Healthcare authority is increasing senior staff. We're waiting on a press release, so you guys providers have seen that, so, you know, remember, we advocated for them, they deserve more than $19 a month, and we've been snap them. Okay, they're gonna be getting it, so you'll be seeing a press release on that.
I don't know, again, so in reference to, hear me? In reference to case management, so, if they're covering the whole state of New Mexico, I know it's hard work, I know it's a lot of work, but in the Southwest, we get forgotten. So if you're, you know, going to be asking for funding, maybe putting some staff out in that area. We end up doing our own case management. It's what we've done forever and ever. So we don't mind, but if you request funding, that would be helpful again. In the Southwest, we get forgotten. Thank you.
And probably, we resources to cover more of that area, if there's these number increases. Yeah, there are certain areas in the state where those numbers are, and we also project based off of, again, those that are eligible, that are on the rolls at healthcare authority for not only the staff, but duly enrolled with Medicaid, Medicare.
Did you see my so, after we get you sent to we say direct people that are ready. So where they're getting their referral from by the AOC or data. So those we're routing I was telling more people, you know, that we gave this call, depending on what the needs are, we may refer them to you, but also refer them to these medicines, but they're, they show the need for that service. So if you have consumers that are coming into you and they can help you, they can use, for instance, we got a call, a consumer this week that they're maybe. Yeah. That's better. So that's. But we have consumers doing assessment and they're telling us they need, and then because of matters. You all have fun. Okay, thank you. And again, if you need their contact information, you can find it out on the website or you can contact our.
Thank you. And so that point, as we get a mind over the facility. But to that point, Davida and I think the one you know, it really is about collaboration. know, and not only health workers and our service providers, medical service providers in different areas, in different, they're different from one county, right? So not, losing sight, we have a consumer that's truly, eligible, that's Medicaid, Medicare, it's really getting them referred to the MCOs. So that we're getting MCOs really engaged and what is that consumer's need? You see it very differently than maybe what they're seeing.
$8. So going back to $8, how exactly would you guys like us or is there suggestions in collecting that data? Because I'm currently in a situation right now, right? Where I got people coming in service, but how do I reach you and hold down to way out the sticks and you don't know who they are or how to get to them, how finding out what the need is for those contact people if we don't know who all out there. How do we get that to them?
You collaborate with local public office, Department of Health and, Health Authority, which used to be Human Services Department. Show of hands. Magdalena. Spinning. Okay, so that's important, Crystal, is really being able to develop that relationship with other states departments and that would have maybe those that are eligible in that area, listed, and when there's health or wellness fairs and health fairs, we're getting that information out. How can we get information? I even had a service provider, Stanley was sent out in the water bill, I think it was sent, but in the water bill, send out notices to all of the consumers, about the service. How can we make sure that our cleaners in those areas, are familiar and aware of the services? So it's really, I've met with, taxation rep, pull data from those that have, driver's license that are 65. I pulled, I want to work with the Secretary of State, identify any seniors over that are, registered to vote. So that they can get this information, as you probably have seen, and it's getting started branding. We have new branding and we're getting out there in different ways to make, the public aware of the services. It really is going to work closely with the AAA to make sure at the local level. It is different. It's no cookie cutter. We're saying that all the time, but it is different. There's nonprofit, municipalities, and it's very different in different areas of the state.
So speaking of data, I wonder if it's too late to include a question tool that would let grandparents or let seniors identify as a grandparent based on a grandchild. I think you all know, probably we all know one or two grandparents or kin that are raising grandchildren in Mexico. And the program I work with is very gratefully funded by non-medical and Office on Aging, and have been funded for a long time, kind of building, the program as we go. And we're only in Rio Viva County and Santa Fe. And so it's gonna be a wonderful mission. For start getting the guys aware of what we have going on here in New Mexico.
That is, message that we've been saying a lot the last 2 years is that not only is our older adult population increasing, right, but grandparents and grandchildren, and then the resources And so other state departments like CYFD, Department of Aging, Healthcare Authority and Department of Health, we're all working together to see that we get, they call it, local, one-stop hub type situations, areas, so that it's a one-stop shop. But it's important that we know what those service needs are, so that we can have.
Yes, so, I think we can add one question, basic information. Just to identify some of this for here. We also, section 3 of the assessment form of the universal consumer, the UCIT. Section 3 is about caregivers. And so I'm thinking about how we ask that question in there is, do you have a caregiver? If so, the caregiver needs to fill out the information. So we have the tool within the assessment tool to be able to collect the information that we would need from if it's a grandparent caring for a child or if it's me caring for my mother. So that's in there. I think we do need a prompt within the beginning of the assessment tool to help identify that more.
And I'm just gonna say the reason there's a bit of confusion about that is it used to come in, when we had the state program report before OS years ago. 3 years ago. It used to be called grandparents raising grandchildren. Now it's called older relative caregivers. And so it could include, an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent. And so that may be what part of the confusion is.
And we did go through in training too, all of the definitions. And talk about that. So, and the grandparents raising grandchildren could go as far as, you know, a child is living with a neighbor. So it can be a non-formal relationship. Yeah, that's how we found it, it's grandparents and kin raising children. Yeah, that's how we have started to talk about it because it's still the first, like it is. So they did change the name to relative caregiver. But it is loosey-goosey in my official term of, you know, that child lives with someone other than. But we will, put that on the list.
If you have any additional questions, Courtney passed out cards. If you want to leave the cards up front.
Yeah, if there's any additional questions, we urge that you reach out to us. It's really imperative that we finish out with the virtual information tool, updates in the system so we can finish them. If you have questions, that you want, to send my way or something that's important for us to know the department, especially as it relates to the state plan, please email. I'm trying to get, allow for 24 hours around, but I'm trying to get back to you through email. It's important that we hear from you. Input session for our conference on aging. Don't forget about the conference on aging. It is a limited capacity. By so please make sure you're letting people know about the conference on aging. Any provider wanting to do a watch party, please express that interest to the department. Me, Amy, Andrea. We have our generation magazine. It's going to be sent out on Liberty Guide. Get it that. I appreciate you guys. Please know that I appreciate everything you do. I know our seniors appreciate the service. I know that you are providing a high quality service. I know sometimes I challenge you to really elevate, or maybe it's good food. I know our seniors love that. I know they do. But when we talk about New Mexico Grown, is it something else that we can do and lowering the sodium of the gravy and doing, different potatoes instead of mashed potatoes instead of instant, or we have to use the breaded chicken patty. I mean, so I know that I ask questions. I go through your kitchen when I ask, because I'm happening every day, and you guys are the experts. And in no way when I visit your site and ask you to take me on a tour of your site, and I'm not as critical as how can we help you. So if it's capital, you're gonna see a lot of capital training coming out now in October. But if you have questions as it relates to capital, as it relates to the state plan, as it relates to this universal consumer interventions, will reach out to us, let us know. Thank you to the AAA, for, where did you go? There you are. Thank you, Kyle, Davita, Don, others from non-metro. Thank you for, really being a partner with us and developing this school. Thank you, the staff that have been, helpful today, Robert, Jacob, Grant, Kathleen, Mary. And thank you for being Colorado. Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Safe travel.
Yeah. With the onion.
Yeah.
Well, here's potato. Yeah.
All right.